The latest consumer price index figures show inflation has cooled for the month of July, but instead of acknowledging that the consumer price index had lowered from 9.1% to 8.5%, a different number echoed throughout the Biden administration. And of course, that's a tweet there from Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, saying, "We just received news that our economy had 0% inflation in July. While the price of some things went up, the price of others like gas, clothing, and more dropped." Here to explain is economist and political commentator John Jordan. John, great to have you with us. This is another typical case of playing politics with numbers. I mean, the administration is not necessarily wrong in saying that there was zero inflation for the month of July, but it's the number that they've chosen to use. It doesn't mean that inflation is not infecting the economy. Help us explain to our viewers a little bit about why there are two different numbers floated out here.
Well, the best way to put this, the administration is the flea that thinks it's driving the dog here in terms of the economy and inflation in particular. Certain items, costs went down. Airline fares, gas, and used cars went down dramatically, and that brought down the overall CPI average. Energy prices went down not because of anything the administration did, but because of a huge drop-off in demand from China due to their COVID policies and the deceleration of the Chinese economy. So the administration benefited from lower energy prices, which obviously are probably the biggest single driver of inflation because you need energy to move products, make products. It's not just paying at the pump. Secondly, we look back last summer between June and August, inflation plateaued briefly for about a 75-day period there at about 5.8% before resuming its trend upwards and its torrid pace where we find ourselves now at 9.1 and 8.5%. So we don't know where we are right now. All we know is we have one data point that's mixed at best.
Is the administration being disingenuous by putting out this number zero, particularly off of the back of the fact that they wouldn't say that the United States, that 2 straight quarters of economic decline would qualify as a recession?
Yeah, well, it's the fact that it's 90 days out from the midterms is no real coincidence. The Democrats want to redefine recession because they don't want that word in the minds of the American public as they go to the polls. They understand that political perceptions of the economy harden over the summer preceding an election. They don't want Americans seeing inflation. They want to be able to declare victory here. That's why they wanted to pass the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which is anything but. So they are being disingenuous, and they're trying to redefine recession, redefine inflation as the summer fades into fall and the elections loom.
Speaking of the Inflation Reduction Act, where do you see the most inflammatory provisions in this bill that are going to hurt Americans, particularly those making under $400,000 a year?
Okay, there's a couple of less than charming features to the so-called IRA. One is a 16.2% tax per barrel of imported oil or petroleum products. Bear in mind, the administration really wants to discourage domestic oil production and encourage the importation of hydrocarbons. So that's 16.2% per barrel tax. That's going to be passed right along to the American consumer. Secondly, anybody who has even a passing understanding of economics understands that if you borrow money and pump it into the economy, that is going to be inflationary. Now, Senator Manchin negotiated a so-called $300 billion deficit reduction component to this. But if you really look at this, 4 out of the next 5 years, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation and the CBO, both say that 4 out of the next 5 years, this is going to have a net increase on the federal deficit. So that's the money that's going to have to be borrowed, inflated, and pumped into the economy. And that's where God is here to begin with, Kilmany. I mean, you look, we pumped in $6 trillion. We're paying people not to work. And you wonder why you have a wage price spiral. So they're just doing the same stuff that brought us here. And economic literacy and the administration seem to have parted company some time ago.
Does this make it easier or more difficult for the Federal Reserve right now to sort of to bring down prices?
Well, right now they're fighting the federal government. The federal government is engaging in expansionary fiscal policy, while the Federal Reserve is having to try to slow down the economy somewhat to bring price stability back into its target range of 1.5 to 2.5%. The Federal Reserve is probably, I think, is going to have to do a 75 basis point increase. They can't do a 50-point basis increase, because the message that sends is that the inflation is truly under control, and that would be premature and undermine the Fed's credibility as we go into the last quarter of this year and the first 2 quarters of next year.
Yeah, and also, as you probably said, one of the more less charming portions of this bill is the $80 billion that this adds for the IRS, tacking on 87,000 agents for tax enforcement. I mean, I have to imagine that tax offices are going to be really dotting their I's and crossing their T's when it comes to filing those tax returns. But I mean, practically speaking, how will this impact Americans, and who does it impact?
Well, first of all, it's going to take the IRS some time to actually implement this. It's not like there's 87,000 qualified people waiting to join the IRS. They're going to be able to absorb them into the bureaucracy right away before they sick them on the American taxpayer.
They're all trained up and ready to go.
But that's not coming tomorrow. It's coming, but it's not coming tomorrow morning.
Right.
So what you're going to see is, like, for example, interesting facts, about 38% of American tax filers do their taxes themselves, or they do it with software, or they have a friend do it. And many of these are small business owners. So they are going to catch the brunt of this. They don't have the resources to fight off an IRS audit. So they're the ones going to be stuck with a lot of this. Interestingly enough, most people don't realize this, but when a professional tax preparer does your taxes, and if they make a material misrepresentation or a willful error or a willful omission, they are on the hook themselves. The CPA is, or the tax lawyer is. So when you have a professional tax preparer do it, you're not as likely to have, you're more likely to survive an audit in tax than you are if somebody does it yourself. And so that's one of the reasons why there isn't that much money to be squeezed out of businesses and the super wealthy, because they have these tax preparers doing it who are careful, because they share that risk as well. So that's kind of like the only low-hanging fruit to be gotten by the IRS is by at-home filers or software filers.
All right, John Jordan, we appreciate you breaking that all down for us. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
JP Morgan's CEO is warning that an economic hurricane is coming. Are you preparing? If you don't do anything, your 401k could be a 201k, and that is not good. So call our trusted friends at Lear Capital. For 25 years, Lear has helped investors own gold to protect against market chaos. It's a good thing. They can help you too. Get your information and up to $15,000 in bonus IRA gold. Just call this number, 800-880-4300. That's 800-880-4300.